Welcome to the Project Endure podcast, the place where we talk about life, endurance, persistence, perspective, and so much more. I'm Joe Rinaldi, and I'll be your host. Let's jump in. Welcome back to the Project Endure podcast, episode 19. We have myself, Joe Rinaldi, and we have a very special guest down in Georgia, Leah Gingrich. Leah, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, Joe.
Of course, it's my pleasure. Now, before we get rolling, I have to say a few things. First of all, we got connected through guest from episode 14, Travis Pollen, and any friend of Travis's is a friend of mine automatically. So I already know this is going to be a great conversation. And the other thing that I have to admit is that before we got on this call, needed to clarify your name because I actually, in my mind, mispronounced both of your names, your first name and your last name. I thought it was Leah Gingrich and it's Leah Gingrich, just to set the record straight. So with that being said, Leah, why don't you give us just a little bit of background on who you are and what you're about, and then we'll dive in.
Sure, of course. I'm basically just this pool rat. I am a swimmer and I'm a coach, so I'm just constantly at the pool. I started swimming when I was 4 years old, and I swam all throughout my collegiate years. I had a lot of success when I was in high school and making, national teams and getting to travel the world, going to Olympic trials. And when I got to college, I didn't really see the same success, or I didn't really see the same progress that I wanted to see, I guess I should say. I wasn't really getting faster, started to hate the sport, and a sport that I loved since the age of 4. So I think that was really difficult for me to admit that I wasn't enjoying it. So after my last NCAA's race, I decided to walk away from the pool, honestly never thinking that I would get back in the pool or even be near a pool deck ever in my life after that. But a few short years later, I start coaching, and then I ended up started swimming again. So I took a 6-year break from swimming and decided to get back in and start swimming. And I ended up going best times within 5 months and decided to go for Olympic trials and trying to make the Olympic team this past year, which unfortunately I didn't make the Olympic team, but I've had so many great experiences come from setting my goal that high. And I'm still swimming now and still coaching. So like I said, I'm just constantly at the pool and loving it.
Gotcha. So we live in opposite worlds. I'm a land animal. I am not much of a swimmer. I can do it, but for some reason, it's just, it's not even my endurance. It's just the breathing. And I'm sure if somebody actually taught me how to do it, I'd be fine. But with that being said, take us back to your childhood maybe, and just explain how you even got into swimming in the first place, because I don't think that's something that is super common, at least where I'm from, right? Kids maybe take a swim lesson or two, but then play sports like baseball, football, basketball. So how did you get into swimming?
Yeah, I think, my grandparents had a pool. And then whenever I got a little bit older, we had a pool in our backyard. And I was just always surrounded by swimming, and not even, the structured lessons or anything like that. I was just always in a pool, and I just loved being in the water. And then my family, they just are very athletic, very sports oriented. I tried every sport under the sun whenever I was young, but for whatever reason, I just stuck with swimming. It's what I loved. I got to the age of, I think 11, I was doing 3 or 4 different sports at once. And I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I only want to swim. I want to go all in and swim. And it's that's kind of crazy to look back and be 11 and know that that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be serious about it. So, so I think I was just really, fortunate to have that dedication towards that one sport, where a lot of people, they love doing multiple sports, and that's awesome. I wanted to stick with swimming, and it's what I love the most. And yeah, just always surrounded by a pool.
Yeah. And that makes sense. And it brought you to a place where you were really at a high level in swimming before you ended up taking a really long break from swimming. And before I ask too many other questions, I might as well just lead with this first question that I ask every guest. And if it doesn't lead into swimming, that's totally fine. But what is the hardest thing or circumstance that you've ever had to handle? So something that life has given you that you didn't necessarily ask for.
Yeah, I think it was the 6 years I wasn't swimming, which is really hard to look back and be like, man, I was really unhappy for 6 years, but I was. It's the truth. I was really unhappy, probably even for a little bit longer than that because, I was unhappy those last 2 years of my swimming career. And that was really hard. It was hard for me to admit that I wasn't happy, and it was hard for me to admit that I needed to walk away.
Mm.
And then once I walked away from the sport, it was hard for me to admit that I missed it. And I knew I had more left in me within the sport. And, if you look at USA Swimming, there's not many 30-year-olds. I'm 31 now, about to be 32. I was 28 when I started swimming again. There's not many 30-year-olds who are still swimming. Most people, they finish their college career, and then they either swim a little bit longer or they walk away. So for me, it was like coming back at 28 and then being able to admit, like, I want to try for the Olympic team again at the age of 28 after taking 6 years off. I was scared of what people were going to think of me. I was scared of, like, obviously scared of failing. That's going to be a big part of it too. But it was just those like 6 to 8 years of like just not knowing what I wanted to do in life and not willing to admit to myself and being scared to admit to others what I wanted to do. And then when I realized it doesn't really matter what anybody else thinks as long as I'm happy, I just became this happier person. And I was scared to tell some of my friends that I was going to start swimming again, seriously. And as soon as I finally worked up the courage and I was like, I'm really, really happy swimming again. Like, I found the joy in it again. They were beyond happy for me. And I was like, man, I went so long worrying about what other people think and, making my life more miserable because I'm so worried about what other people think that, and then it all ended up being for nothing because people just want you, the people who care about you, they just want you to be happy no matter what that looks like. And so, yeah, I think those 6 years of just like being young and naive and not knowing what I wanted were really, really difficult.
So I think it's so interesting to look at your story because it sounds like from a young age up until when you stopped swimming initially, you were really focused, dedicated, driven, maybe had a sense of clarity up until maybe the last 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then you went through this period of 6 to 8 years, if you include those last 2 years of swimming, where you just weren't sure anymore. And you had these doubts and lack of clarity. And then you regained that clarity. And maybe there were a couple factors that played into it, but it sounds like you almost needed that time away from swimming to realize that swimming is what you needed. What made you stop in the first place? I'm really curious, like teenage Leah, like what made her stop?
Yeah. I mean, that break was probably the best break for me, always the hard stuff is what makes the good stuff better. And so that break was great. But when I was in college and I was finishing up, it's actually kind of a funny story. I finished NCAAs and I was graduating in 2012. So that would have been another Olympic year. And I'd qualified for Olympic trials. It would have been at the time my third Olympic trials that I was going to. And so I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go to Olympic trials. But after NCAAs, I was like, I can't go to swim practice anymore. Like, I just can't show up. I can't do it. So I went a couple days, didn't go to swim practice. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is my last Olympic trials that I'll probably ever get the chance to go to. Like, I need to just go. And so I went back to practice for a couple days and I was like, oh my gosh, I hate my life. I like can't be here. Walked away. I think I tried one more time to go back and I was like, I can't, like, I'm unhappy. I'm probably making my coaches unhappy. I'm certainly making my other teammates unhappy because I'm just miserable. And I was like, I need to walk away. I'm not going to go to Olympic trials and make the Olympic team feeling this way anyway. It's going to be a bad experience all around. So I just need to go. And like I said, this was like probably over like a 2-week span of me deciding. I remember calling my parents. I remember calling my club coach that coached me whenever I was 11 to in high school. I remember calling him. I specifically remember that conversation, like sitting on my bed, calling him, crying, not knowing what I wanted to do. And ultimately it came down to all those people in my life reminding me that swimming's supposed to be fun. And if I'm not having fun, if I'm not happy, then it's not worth it to be doing it.
Mm.
And so it took a while to get there, but then that's whenever I finally was like, okay, I'm walking away from this. It's what is necessary at this point.
Yeah. Oh man. So there's a lot going on, and then you stop, and then you stop. So you stop. What's the first thing that goes through your mind now without swimming? Was there a period of time where you were thinking, yeah, this is the right decision, and now I got to figure out what's next, not swimming?
Yeah, I think I was excited for a little bit because I did an extra semester, so I had a couple extra months of just being like a normal college kid, and my roommate at the time was doing the same thing. So I think we were just excited to live life like a normal, normal person, not someone who has to wake up at 5:30 every morning to go to the pool and your whole life is dedicated around that sport. So I did have a lot of fun, and then I kind of moved into to trying to become a teacher, which after I graduated from college, I moved back to Pennsylvania. That's where I'm originally from. And I just had the most difficult time finding a teaching job. I could be a substitute, and that was fine and all, but I couldn't find a teaching job. It was really difficult for me. It's really competitive in Pennsylvania. I moved down to Georgia, and I could have found a job like that. So it was just different. So yeah, and I really loved teaching too. I just kind of always felt like something was missing in my life for those couple of years.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so something's missing. You're going through that time period. You're talking to people. You're thinking about it. You're trying to figure out what that missing piece is. Was there a moment or like a time period where you distinctly remembering that swimming is that thing?
So it's kind of funny because I'd never really had that thought initially. I actually started swimming first, and then I
Mm.
had that thought. So we moved down to Georgia. We started a master's program, which master's swimming is for anybody who's like 18 and older that wants to just swim, practice, you can compete. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to start swimming with the master's team. I need to start working out. Like those 6 years, I didn't work out at all. Wasn't going on runs. Wasn't lifting. Like I would maybe try to follow a program for 2 weeks, and then I'd stop for 2 months, and then I try to do something. Like wasn't working out. I was like, all right, I need to get into some kind of shape. I need to do something active. So that's the only reason why I started swimming. And then as soon as I got in that like first week, I was like, oh, I'm doing better than I thought. This is more fun than I thought it was going to be. And I started getting pretty fast, pretty quickly, which I was not expecting because you think 6 years off, like you got to start from scratch. Started getting pretty fast, pretty quickly. And we went to a swim meet like after a month of training, and I got talked into racing. And as soon as I raced, I was like, this is awesome. Let's do this some more.
Mm. And so you were swimming some of your best times after that 6 year break. Is that correct?
Yeah, it took, and within 5 months, I won a best time. And
So
I've gone best times in most of my races by now.
that is incredible. And I think a really timely point, even for me to hear, because as we record this, I'm in my second week of recovering from COVID, still not feeling great. And the rational side of me knows 2 weeks out of the gym away from training isn't going to kill me. But there's another part of me that's like, oh man, I'm gonna be like so weak when I go back. I'm
Yeah.
gonna lose all that I've worked for. It's just not the case. And honestly, sometimes I think we need to slow down so that we can speed up, whether that's a chosen break, a 6 year gap from swimming, or something that we're forced to do, like me being sick. But the interesting part of all of that is that the break led you back to swimming. You came back even stronger than before. And now here you are immersed in swimming again. Is swimming something that you see being part of your life for the rest of your life?
It will be in some capacity. I coach right now too, so and I really do love coaching. So that's always going to be in my life. I think I'll always love swimming and will always get back in the pool. I think, there's going to come a time here, probably not too far down the road, maybe another couple of years, where I'm not taking it near as seriously as I am right now. But yeah, I think that this time around, I look at the sport a little bit differently. I have a different appreciation for it. So I'm not going to get myself to the point of hating it. I feel like I would walk away before that point because I want to be able to walk away knowing that I love it and knowing I can come back to it whenever I want as something that's fun and just, a good workout. But yeah, I don't want it to get to the point, and I don't think I will, because I think, I train differently now than I did then. And I'm not training near as much as I did then. And I'm still faster than I was then. So it's just like better world all around.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you used the word love there to describe your relationship with swimming. And I actually have a quote that I want to read. And then I just want to hear your take on it as it relates to your relationship with swimming. So this quote is not going to sound like it has anything to do with our conversation, but I really think it does. So it's by Carlos Salinas. And Carlos said, "Love is bringing a blanket when someone's asleep, giving the last piece of food to the other person, staying awake to listen to them when you're dead tired, hugging them tightly when they need it the most." And I'm curious for you in relation to swimming, how does that resonate? Because I have a hunch that swimming is a love relationship that requires a whole lot of sacrifice.
It does. And that's like the perfect word. That's exactly what I was going to say. You just have to sacrifice so much. And especially when your goal is to make the Olympic team, like I didn't make the Olympic team this summer, and I can look back and I can tell you, multiple things that I wish I could have gone back and done differently, or, not done. And hindsight's 2020, right? We're always going to have that. But, it's always great to be able to look back and then learn from that. And yeah, I mean, it's sacrificing so much. I mean, I don't always wake up for morning practices now because I'm older, and sometimes also I'm in the afternoon instead. But, growing up, waking up at 5:30 every morning for morning workouts, you need to dedicate time to do weights. And it's not just what you're doing in the pool or in the weight room. It's everything else you're doing when you're at home. Like, what are you eating? How much sleep are you getting? Are you staying out too late? It's just everything. And it's a lot of sacrifice. And I actually had this conversation the other day. Someone was asking if how long I'm going to keep swimming for. And I was like, you know what? Like, I love living the professional athlete lifestyle. Like, I say sacrifice. I don't feel like I'm sacrificing because it's what I want to do, but and that's great. And that's why I know I still want to do it, because I love it. And I'm okay with giving things up whenever it's necessary.
Yeah. And to that point, I think this is something we should probably talk about a little bit more, because even if whoever's listening to this podcast isn't necessarily trying to make an Olympic trial or do anything of that magnitude, or even in the realm of athletics, sacrifice is something that we all deal with and we all have to choose. And so I don't know who said this, but it's something that I've heard over and over again in different phrasing. But sacrifice requires doing what you want most over doing what you want now. And so it's that sense of like, in the short term, you can choose comfort, you can choose pleasure, you can choose what you want right now, or you can sacrifice, put off that gratification and do what you know you need to do. And I believe Mike Tyson even said, discipline is doing the things you hate as if you love them. And for you, swimming might not feel like a sacrifice all the time, but what is it that keeps you driving toward that goal, especially after one, a long journey, a big break, and then not making your ultimate goal this time around? How do you rationalize the disappointment you might feel, the frustration you might have? Just how do you deal with all that? And like, why are you still going after that?
Yeah, I think Olympic trials this summer was, to me, one of my most disappointing moments. And I know for a lot of other people, they would be like, no, you did great. The fact that you were there is awesome. And yes, I agree. But I wanted to make the Olympic team and I didn't. I fell short. And that was really, really difficult for me this summer. I ended up normally after any big meet, you're going to take some time off, right? You're going to take some time off, recover, and then get back into it. I hadn't anticipated probably taking a lot of time off, or, not even deciding to come back to swim at all after that, because, you know, my goal was to make the Olympic team. I thought I was kind of going to be done this summer and then kind of move on. I took a week off and I was like, you know what? I'm ready to start swimming again. I want to get back in the water. And I think that the disappointment that I had is what motivates me. Like, it sucked and I don't want to feel like that again. And how can I make my future experiences better? And, you know, we already talked about like looking back at Olympic trials and what I've learned from it. A lot of it for me in that moment was mental. You know, I freaked out because Olympic trials is the most scary swim meet you'll ever be at. People even talk about, who have made the Olympic team, that Olympic trials is scarier than the Olympics because, you know, once you get to the Olympics, you made it. So there are added pressures when you get there, but Olympic trials is terrifying. And I can look back and be like, man, I know that like I was too much in my head. I was focusing too much, because that's a thing for me. Like, I got to not think about things too much. And so I kind of have used those experiences, and I got back in the water a week later, had a swim meet like within a month or two, and I was going best times again. And I was like, oh, it's because I'm not scared anymore. I'm getting up on the block with a smile on my face, just having fun racing, rather than like, oh, I need to get first or second in this event, I have to do this. No, like, you just got to get up there and race, and everything else will come. So to answer your question, I think for me, you know, whether I have a good swim meet or a bad swim meet, I'm always motivated after, because I'm either like, oh, that was great, let's do that again, like, let's get even better, or, oh, that was terrible, let's figure out how I can get better and that not happen again. And that's how I kind of use those experiences as good motivation and to stay motivated every day.
So that's something we both share. And to be honest, I don't know where that comes from in my life, and I'm curious where it comes from in yours, but I almost heard the phrase, even though you didn't say this, that you were disappointed but not discouraged, and that you were able to use a performance that maybe wasn't ideal to learn, to gain more motivation, and to push forward and improve, which I think is so, so awesome. Now, the other thing I'll say before I ask you the next question is that back in 2018, 2019, I came across a women's Olympic hockey player, and they had just won a silver medal in the Olympics, in the Winter Olympics. And this person showed me the medal, and I got to talk to them a little bit. And my instinct was like, wow, you must be so proud. You must be so happy. You must be thrilled. And this person was so upset, even just having this silver medal in their hands. And at the time, I couldn't understand it, and I probably never will, but it's just the fact that they were so close to gold, and silver is what you get when you lose that game. And it was so interesting, just that competitive nature and mindset, and it was fuel to their fire to do better next time around. So anyway, my question for you is pretty simple. Where did that mindset come from for you? Were you always motivated by both success and failure?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that question, because I think I've just always been like that. My mom will tell a story about how I was like 6 years old and I lost or something. And I was just like, so not like upset, like, oh no, I lost, like mad that I lost. And like, I didn't want to lose again. Like, I was just super competitive from a really young age. I don't know if that's just, you know, like I said, my family's super active. We would always play sports. We'd always be outside doing things. I have a brother who's 6 years older than me. He didn't just let me win things. So, you know, like that competitive was probably brought out just within that. But yeah, I think it was just like always kind of there. And I do think that like some people are just more competitive than others. And I think that's something I'm really grateful for. I'm glad I'm competitive, because I think it makes things more fun. And obviously it keeps me motivated during the hard times as well. So yeah, I don't know. I guess my parents and my brother are probably pretty, we all just like to win, I guess. I don't know. But it's funny because like, I guess my dad, he tells me he was a good, you know, football player and all in high school. Who knows if he really was or not, but my mom didn't really do sports growing up. So it's just kind of funny to look back and be like, yeah, I don't really know, because it's not like it was like forced upon me either. Like, my parents never made me do anything. They never like talk to me about winning or, so I think I was also fortunate to have that in my life. They didn't care what happened.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. And it's interesting just thinking about it now, right? You have anytime you go and perform and there's an outcome associated with it, you can either succeed, and I'll put these in air
Mhm.
quotes, succeed or fail. And either one of those things can propel us forward or hold us back, right? You think about
Yeah.
people who succeed and they get comfortable and they
Yeah.
stop working, right? That's demotivating. You think about people who succeed like yourself who get even more motivated by that. And then the same with failure, right? Failure can discourage us and drag us down, or it can be used as a catalyst. And I think the cool part about both of those things, and for anybody listening, even if you don't have this innate mindset where both failure and success feel motivating to you, you can choose what happens after the outcome. And I think
Mhm.
that's one of the most powerful things that I've ever realized in my life. And one of the themes that continues to come out in these podcasts is that it's always a choice, no matter what happens in life, no matter what circumstances we're forced to deal with or whatever happens, we always have that choice. And
Yep.
that choice is the ultimate power. So for you, Leah, the next question that I want to ask is again about hard things, but this time I want to ask you, what's the hardest thing that you've ever done on purpose? So you knew what you were getting yourself into and you decided to go for it. What was that and why did you do that?
It's probably making that decision to go for the Olympic team this summer because
Mm,
especially whenever I made that decision, it's like took 6 years off. Like, yeah, I want a best time, but I want a best time in like a shorter race. And I knew, if you know nothing about swimming, there's a bunch of races so you can swim all different strokes, different distances and stuff like that. And I was going for the 200 butterfly. I knew that was going to be my best chance to make the Olympic team. And I had 3 years to do it. And that was kind of crazy. And I knew I was going to have to give up a lot of things. I knew I was going to have to sacrifice. And I knew it was going to be hard. And I didn't succeed in making the Olympic
mhm,
team. But I think the best thing about setting your goals so high is even if you don't get there, all the things that you got to experience up to that point makes it so worth it. It's so worth it. And, we live in this world of instant gratification. And so I think that's where, a lot of people struggle with staying motivated and being able to, look 3 years ahead. And, that I was looking 3 years ahead. So it wasn't, if I had a bad swim meet, we'd talk and be like, well, this isn't the meet that you're training for. You're training for a swim meet that's 3 years down the road. So it's okay if we sacrifice and have a bad meet now because we're going through hard training or, whatever it is. But yeah, like right, I didn't make that ultimate goal, but I still got to travel the world swimming and I got to be a part of some really cool things. That's what makes it worth it. And does it still suck that you don't get that ultimate goal? Sure, of course it does. But then you have to look back and just like be appreciative of everything else that has come along throughout that whole experience.
Oh man, you're speaking my language now. So I just took a ton of notes. So a couple things to touch on here. I think again the power of choices and decisions, and
Mm,
at the end of our lives, we are the person. We're the sum of our choices, right now and at the end of our lives. So if anybody's listening to this podcast, for you, for me, right now, we have a choice to make. And every single day we make thousands of them. And who we are tomorrow, who we are next week, who we are next year, it's going to be the product of the decisions and the choices we make. And the cool part about that is we are in complete control of
mm,
those choices. So the circumstances we can't control, choices we can. And I think by choosing the hard thing enough times over and over and over again, we expand our comfort zone. We expand our limits, and we don't know our limits until we push them, kind of like you alluded to.
mm,
And the other thing about that, and I'd love to hear your take on this, is I think goals, outcomes, and products are important, right? It's important to set an expectation, to reach for a goal, to strive for a certain outcome. But at the end of the day, we are not those things. And whether or not you achieved your goal of making it to the Olympics, and then whatever happened from there, maybe you even won an Olympic gold medal, that, short period of celebration, of achievement, right? That's eventually going to pass. And you hear it from everybody
Mhm.
who's achieved a super high level of success. It's not the top of the mountain that matters. It's the climb, because it's the climb that shapes us into who we are, and who we are in that process. That's our life, and that's what's most important. So I would love to hear your take on all of that, and maybe some of the things throughout your journey over the past couple of years that have changed who you are in a positive way.
Yeah, I think like every time now, of course, every practice and stuff is going to impact me a lot, but it's the swim meets that you go to when you see, okay, where's my hard work? What's
Mm.
happening with all this hard work? So it's always after the swim meets that I tend to reflect a little bit more than just the day-to-day swim practices. But I think every time I have a swim meet, I just look back and I reflect on things that are going well and things that aren't going well. And also at swim meets, I think something that I've done a much better job of now than when I was younger was not being afraid to try something new.
Mm.
Each race, I might try a different race strategy. So sometimes I try to go out really fast and see if I can hang on. That's never, ever the best outcome for me. It never is. But lesson learned from that. And then other side of it, I try to maybe take it out a little bit slower and see how fast I can come back. But it's the willingness to try those things. And I think, we've been trying to teach our kids that we coach this a little bit more of like not being able to not being afraid to try maybe a different warm up or a different race strategy. Like if you're not willing to put yourself out there and try those new things, you're never going to know if it works. And I've said like, yeah, you might try it and you might do really, really bad. Okay, cool. We won't ever do that again. But you might try it and you might go a best time, or you might realize, oh, I can do that and I can go even better than that the next time. And I think it's important to do that because you just never know, and it's okay for it to go badly. uh, on the other side of that, we're not going to test something new out at the biggest meet of your life, at your championship meet at the end of the season. We're not going to try those things, but it's really important to try those different things throughout the year so that you can really see what's going to end up paying off the most in the end.
Oh man, yeah, I mean, it resonates on such a deep level
Yeah.
for me, specifically in this period of life, because for the past 7.5 months, I've been in the process of building my own business, leaving my full-time job and learning every single day. And the thing that I continue to fall back on is that it's a John F. Kennedy quote, and he said, "The best time to fix the roof is when the sun is shining." And so, right, in business, in swimming, in life, right, people are afraid to try new things, but
Yeah.
it's much better to try new things when you can and when things are good, rather than being forced to figure out what went wrong and try something new when it's raining and your roof is broken.
Yeah.
So I think for your swimmers, they're very lucky to have you as a coach, but two, do you find that there's resistance from the younger swimmers when you suggest that maybe they should be trying new things?
Yes, because not all, I'm going to generalize. Most of them just care about their time, the end result. They only care about
Mhm.
whether or not they went faster or not. And what's really funny is a lot of times they come up and they're like, did I go best time? And I'm like, well, first of all, if you don't already know what your best time was, like maybe that's, we should know what your best time is. And then we should have goals of what, you want to go. But yeah, it's a resistance because they want to go fast. And I think part of it is stemming from parents, and I'm just going to be really honest. Parents put pressure on their kids whether they realize it or not. I was so fortunate in the fact that my parents didn't. They told me they loved me after every single race, no matter what. I actually got annoyed with them because they would say, "Oh, you did so great," and I'm like, "No, we all know I did bad. It's okay." Like, but they'd be like, "No, we love you. You did awesome." That's not coming from every set of parents around the world, and a lot of parents. I watch at some meets, a lot of parents, if their kid doesn't go best time, you see them like, they go like this up in the stands, and it's like, oh, you don't want your kid to see that. And then when they go best time, it's them being really excited, and they only have that excitedness when they go best time. And so it does stem from them a little bit. And then kids, of course, are trying to make cut. That's the sport of swimming. The sport of swimming is time oriented, and so you're never going to get away from that. But I think it was maybe like 2 or 3 months ago, we sat down with our older kids and we talked about process oriented goals. Like, I'm not going to tell you can't look up and see what your time was when you finish, because that's unrealistic of me to ask of you. But like, let's figure out some process oriented goals that you can be proud of too. What are your splits for this race? And if you can hold those splits, that's something to be really excited about. Are you working on, how long you're staying underwater every wall? If you do that, let's celebrate that, because there's so much more to celebrate than just the time. And that's what, we've really been working on. And that's something that I can appreciate a little bit more as I'm older, right? Because obviously it was going to be the same as, whenever I was a kid. But the other thing is, okay, that wasn't my best time, but that was my second best time. And that's cool too. And, a lot of kids, they don't appreciate that. And I'm like, I'm sitting over here like, oh, that was my 7th best time ever. That's awesome. And it's appreciating the fact that, like, okay, not my best time, but I was really close to it. And that's still really good right now,
Yeah. Now, so if my wife's listening to this podcast, which I hope she is, but who knows, I'll find out when this comes out. But I think one of the things that I talk about quite a bit, and it's probably strange because we're probably at least a few years still from having children, is that I just think of parenthood as like the ultimate opportunity to help a human being develop into just like an incredible person who not only does great things, but helps other people. And one of the things that I care a lot about, and I think it's because my parents did such a good job when I was growing up, like your parents, was my effort was rewarded. It wasn't necessarily the outcome. And outcomes are oftentimes out of our control, especially when you're competing against other people. I mean, you can't control what other people do. You could only control the effort that you make and the decisions that you make. And so I think praising that is really important. Now, obviously, you talked about with your younger swimmers, parents putting pressure intentionally or unintentionally on their children. But it sounds like through your journey, you also felt pressure. Maybe it was in your head, but pressure from what other people would think. And I would love for you to talk a little bit about that, because it's something that I think we all face in different areas of life. We care about what other people think, for better or for worse. So for you, what was that like throughout your swimming career, both while you're actively swimming and during the break? And also, how did you get past that point of caring what other people thought?
I don't think I'm past that, but it will always be there. I think it's just something, like you said, everybody experiences it. I think one of the things that was so great for me with swimming was especially when I was younger and I was having a lot of success, I was so confident within myself and my swimming. And so when I would walk on the pool deck, I was almost a different person than whenever I would go to like school. Whenever I was in school, I had no confidence in myself. I was always worried about what people were thinking about me. And I didn't feel that same way when I was on the pool deck. And that's just because I was confident in that area of my life. But then going through it again, I think for me, it's just the stereotypical, like, what are you supposed to do when you're done with your sport and you graduate? You're supposed to go off, supposed to have a successful job, make a lot of money, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I was going to be a teacher. I wasn't going to make a lot of money anyway. So might as well, do something that's going to really make me happy. But I think that's part of it. That's, what society kind of expects you to do. And I wasn't doing that. And so I felt like weird and that people were judging me. And it's like, I don't really care, like I got to the point where I was like, I don't care because I'm not happy. I need to get myself to be happy. And my fiance was always really great about that. He's been a swim coach for, oh gosh, probably like 10 years or something now. And I don't think coaching is one of those things that people set out to necessarily do as a job later. And the fact that, he was coaching and he was loving it and he was happy, and he would kind of portray that onto me. Like, you have to find something that you're passionate about and that you love, so you don't feel like you're working every day. And he just kept saying that to me, and I was like, okay, like, you're right. Like, I don't want to wake up and go to a job where I'm going to be unhappy all day long. Like, I want to be happy and enjoy what I do and have passion for what I do, because that's how I always felt when I swam when I was younger. And luckily I found that in swimming again. And now I get to do like cooler things than most people do that have the normal 9 to 5 jobs. So I'm like, why was I so hesitant and worried about what they think? Like, I'm traveling. I just got to spend 5 weeks in Italy. Well, so who cares? Who cares what other people think?
It's such a good point you bring up. And just to give a little bit of context for you and for anybody listening who doesn't know my story, very briefly, I went to college at Bucknell University out in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania, liberal arts school, prestigious. I was studying molecular biology. I thought I wanted to either be a medical doctor or do research. And my first year, really my first semester in school, I decided to stop drinking. And at the time, that was a pretty unpopular decision among the people that I was around, as an 18-year-old deciding to stop drinking, which is just hilarious because obviously you're not even supposed to be drinking before you're 21. Anyway, I stopped drinking, and at the time that was very unpopular. I felt maybe isolated. I cared a lot what other people thought. But as time went on, I realized that actually more and more people respected that. And whether or not those opinions changed over time, or just the perception in my head was way off the whole time, I'll never know. But more often than not, people really, they respect that and they even admire that, probably because they in their own lives would want to take control of something that they know just isn't great for them. So anyway, that happened. Then I transferred schools to Rutgers University so I could study exercise science, went to graduate school to get my doctorate in physical therapy, which is where I met Travis. And then less than 3 years after graduating, I quit my full-time job and now do something that's pretty much not related to that field. Again, I felt that same concern of what will other people think, but because I'd been through it the first time, mainly with that drinking experience, I realized that one, it doesn't matter. Two, a lot of what I think other people are thinking of probably is just in my head. And three, down the road, if I'm doing this for the right reasons and I really am trying to make a difference in the world in a positive way, people will end up respecting it. And the people who don't really don't matter. And it's none of my business anyway, what other people think. So I want to read a quote to you and I want to get your take on this one. If you couldn't tell, I'm a big quote guy. So Howard Thurman once said, "Don't ask what the world needs, ask what makes you come alive, and go do it, because the world needs more people who have come alive." What does that mean to you?
Yeah, I love that. I think, it's talking about passion. It's find something that you love doing, find something that you're passionate about, because you're going to excel in that area. Too many people wake up for their job and they're just going through the motions, and they're counting down the minutes until they get to leave and go home. And, we're the opposite of that right now. Like, I see your schedule. I see what time you wake up. Like, you're not doing that, for no reason. You're doing it because it's what you want to do. And you're excited to get started for the day. And you're excited to be starting this business. And that's awesome. And I don't wake up at 5:30 in the morning to go to swim practice because, like, I have to. I'm doing it because I want to most of the time. And, and we get excited when we go to the pool to go coach in the afternoons. It's fun. And if more people can be more passionate about what they do, they'd have way more success in that area. And, I think that's important. I think that's a great quote. I love it.
Thank you. Yeah. And I think finding that passion is one of the more challenging aspects, but once you find it, sticking with it, especially because there's no job on this planet where people wake up 100% of the days and say, like, I 100% want to do this today. Yeah. It happens, right? That's part of it. It's part of being human. But what I want to do is I want to ask you another question. Now, we talked about the 200-meter butterfly, and I'm not sure what the longest distance you've ever swam. You could probably tell me, but this question is about endurance. And so it's real simple. I just want to know, to you, what does the word endurance mean?
I'm going to go two different routes on this one. Endurance and just like the traditional sense for swimming is, how long can you go at a certain speed? It's the aerobic capacity within your body, and it's just like, can you keep going? Can you keep going? But on the other sense of that word, I would say it's, being able to wake up every day doing it, and like enduring through the hard, the good, the highs, the lows, just the daily grind of it. And so that's a little bit different sense of the word, but I think that's important, especially, I'm obviously talking about swimming the most, but swimming is a really difficult sport. You're staring at a black line every single day. You don't really get to talk to your friends very often because you're out of breath, your face is in the water. It's not, like some of the other sports where you can go for a run and talk the whole time you're running. So it can be a really challenging sport. And being able to endure through all of that is really important. But yeah, my endurance when I came back, not quite the same in that anaerobic sense that it was when I was younger. It's a little bit harder for me to get back to.
Yeah, but it's cool to hear that you can get back to it. And the other thing I'll say that I find very interesting and I've thought of recently is just that endurance really only begins at the point of resistance. And so when things are easy, when things are flowing, when we're in a rhythm, and we don't have to really put forth too much extra effort to get over a struggle or barrier or resistance, I don't know, maybe you can consider that endurance, but I think true endurance happens when we start getting some pushback, whether that's from our physical environment and body, or even just our mental and emotional state, right? Resistance is what allows endurance to happen. So, I mean, with that being said, Leah, I want to ask you the final question. And this one's really near and dear to my heart, mainly because when I was going through a dark season of life during graduate school, I relied pretty heavily on other people, on content, on podcasts, on videos and speeches. And a lot of those things helped lift my spirit and give me new insight. So the question is this: if somebody is listening to this podcast right now and they're going through a really challenging season of life, what is one piece of advice that you would give to that person on the other end of the podcast?
Yeah, I think not too long ago, you made a post and it was with the quote, "Everything happens for a reason." I kind of live by that. Obviously that is so hard to remember in a dark moment, but I think everything really does happen for a reason. And those bad times, those hard times, the struggles always end up, you come out of those experiences with something really great. And it's hard to remember that because you're hurting, you're having a hard time, you're in this dark place, but just getting through it however you can, the best that you can, it always ends up turning up great. And it's so important to know that, because you can get into that hard space and let it spiral, and it could go there for a while. But I can look back at all my experiences and know, and one experience, 6 years of being unhappy, like that's a long time to be unhappy. I ended up creating this great experience. And, the last 3 years, 4 years of my life have been some of the best years of my life. And I've had some of the greatest experiences of my life. And I think that came from that 6 year struggle. And I hope nobody goes through 6 years of struggling, but, but, it was, I would go back and do that again in a heartbeat because of what I'm doing now and where I'm at now. And it's important to remember everything really does happen for a reason, and you're going to figure things out. Things are going to end up turning up brighter. You just got to get through those hard times, and don't be afraid to, go to those people that are close to you to help you through those hard times, which is obviously so hard to ask for help, but that's what they're there for, and can help you hopefully get to that brighter spot a little faster.
And I would add just two quick things to that. And one is that you're absolutely right. Asking for help is super important. And It's really a sign of strength, to be honest. I think in the past, maybe teenage Joe would have thought that asking for help was a sign of weakness, but I truly see it now. Being vulnerable and open enough to tell somebody else that you're struggling and ask for help is a sign of strength. And the other thing, of course, in true Joe fashion, I'm going to throw another quote in here. This one, I think, sums it up perfectly. And it's by Steve Goodyear. And he said, "Those who overcome great challenges will be changed, and often in unexpected ways. For our struggles enter our lives as unwelcomed guests, but they bring valuable gifts. And once the pain subsides, the gifts remain. These gifts are life's true treasures, bought at a price, but cannot be acquired in any other way." And I think it's really cool to hear your story, Leah, to look back and to see how at the time that 6-year gap was hard, uncomfortable, confusing. You didn't know why it was happening, but you got to the other side of that. And now you can look back and realize that that unwelcomed guest at the time walked into your life and did bring some pain and hardship and discomfort, but it happened for a reason. And now you have this gift on the other end of it. And I'm so grateful that you shared that with us today. So thank you. Now, if people want to connect with you, if they want to follow along, where can people find you?
Yeah, I try to post on Instagram, pretty frequently. My Instagram's just my name. It's at Leah Gingrich. Yeah, and you can follow along with some swimming adventures.
Awesome. Well, I will make sure to link that in the description below so people can find it. And my final question for you is a pretty simple one is, what's next for you? Is it the next Olympic trial or what's on the radar?
Yeah, I get that question a lot recently. Because my fiance and I got engaged in March. So I get the question of like, when you get married, when you're having kids, all that good stuff. I have no idea when we're getting married because the swimming world right now is so unpredictable, with meets being canceled because of COVID. Just everything's a little crazy right now. And after this summer, I said, I'm going to take it 1 month at a time for now. And then I'm going to make a decision if I'm going for 2024. And I'm still kind of in that limbo right now, taking it one month at a time. I can very easily see myself going. I think in the back of my mind, I like know I'm going to 2024. In the very back of my mind, I know I am. But with the experience that I had this summer and being way too focused and putting too much pressure on myself, I'm like, I'm just doing 1 month and I'm just going to enjoy it and not let myself get too worked up about everything else that's going on right now. So will I go to 2024? More than likely. I have just not officially said that and made that decision. And then, yeah, after that, I think I'm going to be ready to have a family. So that's kind of the general goal, but we'll see. You never know what's going to happen. So
that's super exciting. We won't hold you to it. You did kind of say it on the podcast, but we won't hold you to it. But I love it. Just being in the here and now and enjoying the process, and just really appreciate you sharing all of that with us today. So Leah, thank you so much for your time, and we're wishing you all the best.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is fun.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Project Indoor podcast, go ahead and subscribe, leave a review on your platform of choice, and share this episode with a friend. It helps us get more conversations like this out to more people like you. We appreciate you, and we'll talk to you next time. Oh, and one more thing. If you're looking for a community of people all striving to be better together, check out the Project Indoor Hard Things Club. The link is in the description below. We'd love to have you.